welcome, hello, how are you today? Or as they say in Arabic, marhaban bikum, which means welcome to you or to all of you, bikum to you. So, this is basically a follow-up to my video that I posted on Friday, which was, what is it like to live in Saudi Arabia? And many of you enjoyed that video. It gave a brief description or picture of life in Saudi Arabia. Now, in this video, I'd like to give a bit of a follow-up because actually it's a personal experience from Friday evening, which I'd like to share with you, of something which you should not do in Saudi Arabia. And I'm sure you could think of 100 different things that you should not do in Saudi Arabia, but this is a pretty big one. Now, as you're probably aware, Saudi Arabia is really big. It's a huge country, and most of it is empty. In fact, there's a huge section in the southeast of the country that's called the Rub al-Khali, which is the empty quarter. Rub means empty, and Rub means quarter, and Khali means empty. So Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, which is mostly full of desert and sand, and it's generally not advisable to go there without a guide. And I didn't go there yet, anyway, but I did go along with a group of friends on a trip to the desert, and I won't name names or give too many details, but the main point was to see the stars. Apparently there was a comet passing by Earth, and there would be lots of shooting stars, so it was a great opportunity to go and see the night sky. And of course we wanted to go to an area that was as far away from civilization as possible, as far away from light pollution as possible. So, we were driving late at night, a few hours towards Riyadh, on the Riyadh road, and then we drove off-road, and before we knew it, we had driven into sand. We were driving uphill and we got stuck in sand. Yeah, so that's really a bad idea. Yeah, don't do that. None of us obviously had intended to do that. None of us had planned on getting stuck in the desert, and really depending on what time of year you're stuck in the desert, it could go from really bad to incredibly bad to, life-threatening. So don't do that. Don't get lost in the desert. And generally if you're going out in the desert, find a guide, get the right vehicle. I'm not averse to going to desert climbs or doing interesting and unusual things like, for example, riding a camel near the pyramids. In fact, I did do that, as you can see in this brief clip here.
All right. Okay. Hold tight and get him back.
Yep.
You filming him with the camera?
Yes.
Look at the camera. Step on pose.
Oh yeah. So moving swiftly on. I've been in the desert a few times. In the Siwa Oasis, which is on the border with Libya, it's in Egypt, but it's near Libya in the far west of the country. I think I have a picture somewhere from that. Yeah, that was a few years ago, so yeah, I don't look quite the same as I did back then. By the way, yes, currently drinking this tea, hibiscus tea in English, produced by the Rabia tea company of, I think it's a Saudi company, maybe based in Jeddah, I think. So yes, if Rabia Tea want to sponsor me at any point, I'll be happy to do so. They're not sponsoring me at the moment. Anyway, quite good tea. So, what happened? Yeah, we got stuck, and we had to basically dig ourselves out, which took most of the night. It was basically on and off, digging with some logs that we brought for a log fire, and our hands, basically getting on hands and knees, shoveling sand with our hands, throwing it behind us, and generally, being a bit ridiculous. So, got sand everywhere, sand in my socks, sand in my shoes, sand in my pockets, sand everywhere you can imagine. So it was a little bit uncomfortable, but we did enjoy the experience. Nice campfire, telling scary stories, eating snacks, generally trying to keep ourselves in good spirits, even though we were consistently trying and failing to extricate ourselves from the situation. So, actually, I've got a couple of clips from the morning, because actually we continued this process until morning. We took some breaks to relax in the middle, and our driver was very good. He kept on digging even while we were sitting down, so good on him. But yeah, here's some clips to show you a bit of what was going on. Trying to dig our way out of the sand, which we've been doing most of the night, and still stranded here, but hopefully we'll be able to dig our way out soon. Right, so we did eventually get out of there, and luckily it wasn't too cold at night. It was chilly a little bit. As you know, we're getting close to the Saudi winter, where it gets very rainy and chilly in this region. This is actually a quite humid region of Saudi Arabia, the eastern province, Ash-Sharqiyya, as I told you before, but we had already driven closer to, in the direction of Riyadh, and Riyadh, which is in the Najd region of Saudi Arabia, is in the desert, and the desert tends to be a lot drier than the coastal area, or the Persian Gulf area, or Arabian Gulf area. So it was quite dry, but it was getting cooler. Now, if we had gone during the actual winter time, we would have been very cold, and we were not adequately prepared for that kind of temperature. Or had we gone in the summertime, it still would have been quite hot, or the temperatures would have increased greatly as soon as dawn occurred. Around dawn was 4 something, but sunrise was maybe around between 5 and 6, and we managed to get out of there around 6-ish. We'd finally dug our way out and got the vehicle turned around. It was a 2-wheel drive, not a 4-wheel drive, so that was another mistake we made. But generally, don't go driving on the sand unless you have the right kind of vehicle, people know where you are, you have the right supplies in case things go wrong, maybe a backup vehicle or a guide who knows what he's doing. So it wasn't my idea. I was sort of dragged along on this adventure, but yeah, what can I say? I agreed to come along, so I was party to it, but I don't recommend it. Do not go out in the desert unless you know what you're doing and where you're going. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And yeah, in general, I've been in a few situations like that before. I've been stranded, sort of, in the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt. I've been in similar situations. So the other key thing, of course, is to remain calm, which I did. Don't panic. Keep up in good spirits. As you could see from the video that I sent, we were in general good spirits. And just have faith. Have faith in providence, in fate, in God, in a higher power to get you out of that. And this is something that I talk about in my book, Mindfulness, and it comes under the general principle that I mention of radiant acquiescence, which is essentially accepting whatever happens to you as part of a higher purpose. I'll find the quote for you in a minute from my book. So if we look at chapter 4 of Mindfulness, my book on how to achieve real happiness, true knowledge, and inner peace, which is available on Amazon Kindle as well as in paperback. This is chapter 4, if you can see it there, which is entitled The Second Way to Be, Radiant Acquiescence. Now, what does that mean? What is radiant acquiescence? Well, as I explained here, to acquiesce means to submit or accept silently without protest. It is sometimes put into a negative context of accepting reluctantly. The meaning that we intend, however, is willing acceptance and submission. The word radiant implies shining and glowing. Radiant acquiescence, then, means accepting and submitting with abundant joyfulness and radiance, knowing that such submission is the best wisdom. Radiant acquiescence means submission not just to any being or will, but to the divine being, the primal will which brought the universe and all that is within it into existence. That's the definition that I give for radiant acquiescence. So what does that mean? That means essentially that even if you don't believe in a higher power or in God or whatever, it's an acceptance that everything that is meant to be. Nothing happens without a purpose. So there's no point in getting worried, getting upset about life, or worrying that things aren't happening the way they're supposed to be. If you happen to get lost in the desert or stranded in the desert, that's just the way things are, and there's nothing you can do to roll back time. Maybe you made some bad decisions that led you to that place, but there's no point in worrying about it. And ultimately, radiant acquiescence means submitting your own will to a higher will or a higher purpose. And this is actually a very ancient concept that we find in many different philosophies, religions, etc. Actually, there's a word for it in Arabic, or a related or similar concept, which is called tawakkul. Tawakkul. And as you saw in my previous book review video, I like to use this Arabic English dictionary, the Hanswehr Dictionary of Modern Written Arabic. And how does it define tawakkul? Trust, confidence, or trust in God. Passivity of living of the early ascetics and mystics. It derives from the root, on page 1283, wakala yakilu, which means to entrust, assign, commission, charge, put someone in charge. In other words, you entrust your affairs or your situation, your problems, your worries, everything. Take all of those and bundle them up, okay, and offer them to a higher power, to something above yourself, to God, to Allah, to a higher being, okay, and then you don't have to worry about them anymore. You know, you can relax knowing that there is something above you, something higher than you, that is guiding your life or guiding your affairs. And that's very liberating, far from being a sort of meek submission to fate. It's not fatalistic. It's an idea that there is something greater than each one of us. There is something more powerful than each one of us. There is something mystical in existence. And if you believe in God, then you'll call that God. But I find it very unbelievable that people can just see this world in the base terms of material existence. There has to be something more liberating, something higher, something more exalted than ourselves. And this concept of radiant acquiescence or submission to a higher power, or tawakkul as the Arabs say, is a very liberating concept. And let me see if I can find another quote here. Yeah, so as I say further on, to attain true happiness, therefore, we must be content with the primal will, which is the way of the universe. It may be considered to be a lamp which shines throughout all time without beginning or end. So that's just a symbol that I'm using in my book to describe this higher power or this higher being. So, yeah, I'm just adding this to the story to give you a more mystical or spiritual or elevated way of understanding this story, and why it is that I wasn't too worried about what was happening, because I was basically, taking this problem of potentially being stuck in the desert and putting it into the hands of a higher power or higher being. And that's quite liberating, and it's quite reassuring, and you know that ultimately nothing can go wrong. Everything in your life, if you do this, everything in your life can go right. Even if you suffer difficulties, even if you suffer setbacks, ultimately they're there for a reason, and they're going to make you stronger, and you're going to be better because of it, as long as you have the right mindset and the right attitude. So that's why I highly recommend, I'm not saying that you have to read my book, but I think it can help you. And if you want to feel better about yourself and live a happier life, then I really highly recommend that you read my book, Mindfulness: 5 Ways to Achieve Real Happiness, True Knowledge, and Inner Peace, which is available on Amazon Kindle to download right away if you want to start reading it today, this moment, or you can, of course, buy the paperback, which I don't have a copy of here at the moment because I'm in Saudi Arabia. It costs a lot to get shipping to Saudi Arabia. Of course, you can do it, but anyway, so those are just a few thoughts and reflections for you today. And as I said before, number one thing not to do in Saudi Arabia is to go out into the desert unless you know absolutely what you're doing. So avoid that, guys, and I hope you have a great day.